Hello everyone, my name is Brian Wanchisto. Once again, I'm here to talk about electronic spreadsheets. Basically, an electronic spreadsheet is a way data is electronically organized into rows and columns or into a grid. That grid is made up of rows and columns. Electronic spreadsheet softwares refer to application packages that may be used to carry out calculations or even create graphs using a computer. These may include, though not limited to, Microsoft Office Excel, Lotus 123, Kspread, Apple Numbers, OpenOffice.org, Calc, and Kingsoft Spreadsheet, Ability Spreadsheets, among others. Basically, there are two types of spreadsheets. We normally have what we call the manual spreadsheets and the electronic spreadsheets. Manual spreadsheets will organize their files in rows and columns, though in hard copy, whereas electronic spreadsheets will organize their files in grids of rows and columns in an electronic format or in a soft copy format. So briefly, that is a brief preamble about what we refer to as electronic spreadsheets. I'm going to take you through this tutorial using Microsoft Office, Excel, and we shall do a number of things, like we shall create layouts of spreadsheet models, we shall add text, numbers into the spreadsheets, we shall edit functions, cut, copy, paste, enter formulae, and carry out simple calculations with our spreadsheets. We shall also replicate formulas and functions, and we shall carry out sorting, changing the display formats. We shall also change the sizes of rows and columns within a worksheet. We shall also work with worksheets and workbooks, okay? And we shall adjust page orientation, save spreadsheets, and print out copies of our spreadsheets. Basically, that is what I'm going to look at in this tutorial. To begin with, well, of course, this is my work area or my working area. I'll right click somewhere here. I go down to new and we look for Excel. Microsoft Excel worksheet. That is one method, one way of creating a worksheet. The other method will be I would go to my start menu and look for all programs, and I'll look for Microsoft Office 2013. Then I'll open Microsoft Office 2013. Okay, that is also another method of opening a spreadsheet. Well, we can open our spreadsheet and look at that first window. I will not go back to the detail of editing work like underline, bold, italics, that formatting of the work. I may not go back to it because we have seen this in the previous tutorials of Microsoft Office Word. So basically what we shall do is the detail of spreadsheets, what makes a spreadsheet, and of course what calculations or the different ways we can use our spreadsheets or arrays. Well, let's now get into the practical session of this tutorial. So basically, we say the spreadsheet is a collection of grid lines. These grid lines will run from top to bottom, and some will run from east to west, or from the right hand side to the left hand side. And where they intersect, normally they form what we refer to as the cells. So basically, I'm going to highlight my cell, my row number 5 with a black highlight color, and highlight column E with the same shade. Then where they meet, that is the E5 is going to be my cell. I'm going to remove the color from this cell. Maybe I give it a white color. Okay, so this white here is what we shall refer to as the cell. The intersection of a row by a column forms what we refer to as a cell. Number 5 here is what we shall refer to as a row, and this E here, column E, is what we shall refer to as the columns. So those ones that are running down become our columns, and the ones that are running eastwards become our rows. Therefore, these will run from A up to infinity and downwards. They also run downwards. So we shall be entering different pieces of information into this worksheet. Our cells will always be named or will always be identified based on the column, letter, and the row number, column by row. Therefore, if you are naming a cell in a spreadsheet, we shall not be calling it this cell. We shall be calling it cell E5 because it's the intersection of column E by row 5. So that one forms what we refer to as cell E5. Cell A1 is the intersection of column A and the intersection of row A. Basically, that is how we shall be naming cells in a spreadsheet. The other way we can name these cells, I can choose to right click in this cell A. I right click here and define a name maybe, and I'm going to call this cell Brian. So whichever information that will be entered in this cell here will be called Brian. Okay, so this cell is going to be numbered or named Brian. We shall go to B1, we can go to C1, but A1 is no longer being referred to as A1 because we formatted the name and we define its new name as Brian. So whenever I want to refer to this cell here, I'll just be writing the name Brian, and that cell address will be picked. So this brings us to what we call an address. An address is what I've been explaining, the intersection of a column and a row. Where you have E meeting 5 becomes cell E5, and that is the cell address of the cell here. We have the cell here, it will be called D5. So we can now move on. I'm going to enter some piece of information into here. I can decide to call this maybe a number, and I click in the next cell and say name. I can also use the tab key to move to the next cell and call this age. Okay, then under here I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe 5. Then the name I can choose to say Brian, Kizito, Habiba, Nanyonjo, and maybe Melissa. Okay, then I can give it age. Melissa is maybe 5 years old, Nanyonjo is maybe 20 years old, and Habiba is maybe 23 years old. Kizito is maybe 50 years old, and Brian is about 35 years old. As simple as that. That is how basically we can enter data into a spreadsheet or into our worksheet here. What you're seeing here is literally what we shall refer to as a worksheet. This highlighted piece of work is what we refer to as a worksheet. Then of course when you look down here, we have sheet 1. This becomes our worksheet, worksheet 1. I can choose to double click in the word sheet 1 and call this my work. Okay, I give my worksheet a new name. I can also choose to add a new worksheet here. Then when I save this in my file, in my folder that I opened, I can choose to save this in my folder that I opened, like save as. I choose to save browse and say maybe I want to save it on the desktop in a folder called tutes. Okay, I'm going to call this tut1 and I can save this. So this one will become our workbook. When I open this, where is tut1? This tut1 becomes our Excel workbook. Okay, the first workbook that we've created, and it has 2 worksheets. If I open it, it's going to be opening like this. It has my work and sheet 2. Then you can also add another sheet called sheet 3, and you can rename this and call this maybe Habiba. Okay, that is my my work. Then this is a sheet that we've named Habiba, and we have sheet 1 also. We can also decide to rename this and give it maybe shop. Okay, these are different worksheets, and these worksheets are all into one spreadsheet file that we shall refer to as a workbook. Basically, that is that. So after entering this data in here, we can choose to carry out some bit of formatting onto this information here. For example, I can choose to maybe highlight these labels here. These labels are called labels because they give meaning to this information down here. Okay, if we only had these numbers here, let me hide this. I right click and hide the row. Okay, in case I've hidden this row, this information here becomes more or less meaningless. You have 1 to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then you have some Brian, Chizito, Habiba, Nanyonjo, Melissa, 35, 50, 23, 20, and 5. This information here may be meaningless if it doesn't have what we refer to as the labels. So these labels are so meaningful to us, and we can always use them. In case we want to modify, format these labels a bit, you just need to select, just click in the cell like this. You can always come and of course change the font type, maybe to Times New Roman, Times New Roman. You can even increase the size to 12 points. Okay, I can also change this to Times New Roman and the size to 12. And I can also edit this to maybe Bookman, or I should use Times New Roman also, and the size to 12. Okay, then of course you can also decide to format them collectively just by selecting them at once. I hold my left click mouse button down, click in one of the cells and hold my left click mouse button down and drag to the right in a straight line. Alternatively, I can also use the shift key on the keyboard and arrow keys. I hold my shift key down and the arrow key that moves to the right to select these cells that are on the right hand side. Then we can also collectively format them, like change the alignment to center. We can also choose to bold, italicize them, and maybe underline them. We can also define underlinings, double underline also. Okay, we can also choose to edit the font text, the font color. Okay, and we can also decide to give it a background color, maybe a background color of this kind. Okay, and we can also decide to add borders to this worksheet, to our data here. Just select the data the same way we selected these rows. Now I'll hold my left click mouse button down and drag downwards, then I'll drag to the right and select the entire information that I want to put to borders. Then of course when you come here, you'll find the border tool here. I can always click here and choose, do you want to put maybe outside borders, so you have outside borders, or you can even define more borders. And you can choose to say maybe I want a box border like this, but I want to use a thick line and give it a color of maybe red. Okay, I apply my borders just like this. Click where you want to apply the border, like that. Okay, then I can change the color back to black and change the size of the border and put the middle borders. Okay, just like that, and I will click at OK. So we shall have our outside border as red and the inside borders will always remain black. Something of this kind. What if you have forgotten maybe this information has a heading, My Family? Okay, and we want to add a new row above the name, a new row above the number, name and age. What do? All you need to do is bring your cursor and put the cursor over 1, then you get this kind of cursor or pointer. Left click once, you can also right click here and you will be able to insert, and a new row will appear at the top here. So you can select this entire row like this. You come to merge and center. Okay, merge and center. Then you can type a heading, My Family. That is the heading. You can also decide to change the font maybe to stencil, or I need to select the row that I want to edit. I change the font size, the font face to stencil, the color to maybe red, and the highlight color to maybe gray. I can choose to use this light gray. Okay, let me use a green one, and I can choose to increase the size to maybe 14. Okay, it is already in the center, and you can also apply borders to it of this kind, both a top border, the left border, and the right border only. So our borders will appear like this for the heading. Okay, but we can also choose, maybe we want to change the alignment of this information here. Maybe this information is taking up a lot of space, like the numbers here. They are taking up a lot of space and we would wish to reduce the size of this. So we can select this cell and you come to text direction here or orientation here, and you can change it to maybe right angle or format cell alignment, and you choose which angle you want to put. Maybe I want to put it at 60 degrees. Okay, 60 degrees, and I say okay. So the number has changed alignment to about 60 degrees. I can also apply the same to the name so that it is uniform. I change the angle here to 60 as well. Okay, but I can also select the 3 of them. I come to text direction, and of course I format cell alignment, and I put the degrees here to 60, and all of them will change at once. So that makes our work simple and of course very easy too. Basically, that is that. When we come to playing around with the home button, you can choose to bold this, make it appear in italics. You also double underline it, or you single underline it. And yeah, we can proceed. Briefly, that is how we enter data and do some bit of formatting on this data. The next thing I want us to look at is, of course, carrying out simple calculations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division onto different numbers that may be entered into, of course, into an Excel worksheet. So we can choose to maybe say we are going to use this for addition, and we are going to have our numbers, like I can choose to say I have number 1, 2, 3, and 12. Then I'm going to add this to a number that is 5. I choose 5, and of course we are adding here. I'm going to add them here. We can use add here. Then here we shall subtract. Next we shall multiply. And we shall also carry out division. Divide this number here by the number down here. So if we are adding any number like 5 added to 1 in Excel, for you to carry out any operation or any function to be executed in a spreadsheet, entering any formula in a spreadsheet, you should always begin with an equal sign. So you put your equal sign up there like that, and you're going to say, we said we shall be calling these cells, like the cell containing 5 here is going to be called by the column letter and the row number. So I'll say A1 because that is the cell containing 5. It is in column A and in row 1. And I want to add my A1 to, of course, you can put the plus symbol there. The plus symbol is on the keyboard. You hold the shift key and the equals and the plus symbol. Then we want to add it to column A and the row 3, and row 2. So we shall say A2. That is, we are adding 5 plus 1, and the answer will be a 6. With Excel, with Microsoft Office Excel 2010 and above versions, you do not necessarily have to put brackets here. But for those lower versions, you must put brackets here. For you to carry out any operation, it must be in braces. Okay, you put those C brackets there just to concatenate or to put together whatever you're carrying out. Okay, so we can keep adding just by calling the cell number. When I click here, you'll see the cell is A5, A1, and of course we are adding A1 to A3. So we can, of course, keep adding. We always begin with an equal symbol, and we are adding our A1. You can always also choose to just click in the cell that you want to choose. If you are being confused by how we call the cell addresses, you can always just call them by, or you can always just identify the cell by clicking at the cell that you want to, of course, put into your formula. Just by clicking there, it will appear. So I'll say equals A1 plus A4, and you have 8. We can do this for all the rest. Okay, A5, you have 9. We can do that for all the rest. Alternatively, just click in the cell that you have carried out the operation from, and you get to the extreme end of the cell on the right down. You can double click after getting this kind of cursor. You can always double click, and the formula or function will be carried out to the rest. That is what we call filling. The formula will be carried out to the rest of the worksheet. Simply like that. Alternatively, we can choose to subtract this number here, our number here. Let me rename this cell and call it, define its new name and call it maybe number. How do we define, or how do we rename a cell from being called A1? We can also choose to give it a particular name. Maybe I want to rename it. I right click in the cell and rename or define a name. Then you can give it a name. I'm going to call this cell Brian. Okay, so I click at OK here, and in my formula here, I'm going to say equals Brian plus, you see what happens? It's already selecting the 5. Brian plus A2, and it will give us a 6. This time we are subtracting, so I need to do Brian minus a 2 and it will give us a 4. Okay, the same thing can happen. I'm going to call my cell again. I'll say equals Brian minus a3 and it will give us a 3. That is 5 minus 2. Alternatively, I can come inside my spreadsheet here and just type what I see. You say equals maybe 5. This is our 5 minus 3 minus 3. It will give us a 2, but this is not acceptable in Excel because you're looking at the numbers. We're supposed to use cell addresses. Okay, so we can use our cell address. I just click here and the name Brian will appear. Then I will say minus, of course, 3. 3 is in cell A4 and I can enter. We can also fill up here just by double clicking here. You can fill up. Okay, the same thing can happen for multiplication. You say, we said we always begin with an equal sign. You can also open your brackets and you say Brian multiplied by, multiplication symbol is this asterisk symbol. It is always found on the key that has 8 on your keyboard or on your numeric keypad. There is an asterisk symbol that you can always use while carrying out multiplications. So I want to multiply my cell called Brian with the cell A1. So I can just click into cell A1 and A2 and it will be written here. Then I can close my brackets here and press enter. So 2 times 5, 5 times 1 is giving us 5. We can also try out for the next one, which is, I'll call it Brian again. I call Brian and say times Brian multiplied by A3 will give us 10 because 5 times 2 is equivalent to 10. We can also do that for the rest of the spreadsheet. Alternatively, if you don't want to use the equal sign, you can also use the plus symbol to begin your formula or your function, or you can also choose to use the plus symbol. You say Brian plus Brian asterisk, of course we are multiplying it with the A4 and it will give us 15. That is 5 times 3. The same thing can happen. You can also decide to just fill up the cells. Alternatively, you can choose to put your cursor here and you drag downwards. This is filling up. You drag the formula that you have used in that cell downwards to be applied all through. And lastly, for division, you can also choose to say equals Brian, of course, divided by, use the forward slash, and we are dividing Brian by 1. The 1 is contained in cell A2 and we can say equals, and that is 5. It gives us 5. When you press enter, you'll get 5. Same thing can happen. You can also choose to use the plus symbol again and you say Brian plus, Brian slash 2, which is in cell A3, and you can get 2.5. That is 5 divided by 2, you get 2.5. You can also decide to just drag this downwards, and you get the right answers also. Briefly, that is how we carry out addition or multiplication or subtraction and the division.